Okay, so we're going to get started with some of the introductory information here. Again, welcome to the webinar on the third edition of the Innovative DOT Handbook of Policy and Practice. First, I'd like to introduce our speakers. My name is Chris Spahr, and I am a project assistant at the State Smart Transportation Initiative and a doctoral student in urban and regional planning at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. My research focuses on transportation and public health. And prior to working for SSTI, I worked as a planner for Michael Baker International in both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, where I provided consulting services to state DOTs in the areas of transit and rail planning, as well as National Environmental Policy Act reporting. I hold a master's degree from Shippensburg University. I'm a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, and I'm a graduate research fellow with the University of Wisconsin Institute for Research on Poverty. Also with us today is Roger Millar, who is a vice president of Smart Growth America. He serves as the director of Smart Growth America's Leadership Institute, which provides technical assistance programs for state and local government, and as director of the National Complete Streets Coalition. Roger has held leadership positions in the public and private sectors as manager of the City of Portland, Oregon's Arterial Streets Division in the 1980s, and more recently as director of the Missoula, Montana Office of Planning and Grants, which included the Missoula MPO. Roger is a fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers and a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, and is also a certified floodplain manager. From 2000 until 2013, he was a member of the ASCE Committee for America's Infrastructure, which produces the report card for America's infrastructure. We're also very fortunate to have with us today Toks Omishakin. Toks is the Chief of Environment and Planning for the Tennessee Department of Transportation. In this role, he directs the Environment and Planning Bureau, which oversees the project planning, long-range planning, multimodal transportation resources, and environment divisions. Before joining TDOT, Toks served as the Director of Healthy Living Initiatives in the Mayor's Office of Nashville. He also held positions as the Bicycle Pedestrian Coordinator, Senior Planner, and the Director of Music City Moves for the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County. Toks holds a master's degree in urban and regional planning with a concentration in transportation and urban design. And finally, we're very fortunate to have with us Billy Fields. Billy is the director of the Center for Research and Public Policy and Training, and is also an assistant professor of political science at Texas State University. His research focuses on understanding the key elements of resilient communities. He has examined resiliency from transportation, urban planning, and hazard mitigation perspectives with publications in the Journal of Public Health Policy, the Journal of Urban Design, Cityscape, and the Journal of Health and Place. He is also co-editor of the spring 2013 release by Island Press, Transport Beyond Oil. His ongoing research evaluates the impact of the federal non-motorized transportation pilot program in Minneapolis through a longitudinal evaluation of the impact of changes in the built environment on bicycling usage. So our plan for today is for Roger and I to provide a short introduction to the Innovative DOT and some of the updates in the 2015 edition, followed by a more in-depth discussion led by Toks on some of the innovative strategies being implemented at the Tennessee DOT, and finally a discussion led by Billy about the unique ways to use the Innovative DOT to train future professionals. So what is the Innovative DOT Handbook? The Innovative DOT is a handbook of policy and practice. It's developed by Smart Growth America and SSTI and documents innovative strategies that are being implemented by state DOTs in order to meet 21st century transportation needs. Originally released in 2012, the 2015 edition builds upon its predecessors with updated content. And for those who are not familiar with SSTI, I want to give you just a brief overview. You can find more information on our work at our website, ssti.us. Founded in 2010 and housed at the University of Wisconsin, we work with a network of state DOTs to promote transportation practices that advance environmental sustainability and equitable economic development. while maintaining high standards of governmental efficiency and transparency. We do this in 3 ways: as a community of practice where participating agencies can learn together and share experiences as they implement innovative smart transportation policies. The Innovative DOT acts as a resource where DOTs can share some of these innovative ideas. We also act as a resource for direct technical assistance to the agencies on transformative and replicable smart transportation reform efforts. And finally, we act as a resource to the wider transportation and community, including local, state, and federal agencies in their efforts to reorient practice to changing social and financial demands. Now I'm going to invite Roger to talk to us a little bit about Smart Growth America and to provide a little bit of history of the Innovative DOT and how it came to be. Roger's been with this project since the start, so he really has some good insight on the whole spectrum of how the Innovative DOT started and how it became what it is today. So welcome, Roger.
Great, thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Roger Millar with Smart Growth America. Smart Growth America is a national not-for-profit organization dedicated to researching, advocating for, and leading coalitions that bring smart growth practices to more communities nationwide. As Chris indicated, I manage Smart Growth America's technical assistance activities, including the work that led to the Innovative DOT. The Innovative DOT came out of a need to provide state departments of transportation with strategies that they could use to achieve the greatest outcomes at the least cost with transportation investments. When we first began to look at smart growth and state transportation policy, our concern was that smart growth policies are often seen as good ideas, but we wanted to make sure that in the fiscally constrained environment we work in today, that they were also seen as good deals for departments of transportation. So the handbook was designed to give states strategies that they could use that were not strategies that were predicated on having lots of money. There are innovative approaches that state leaders are already using to make systems more efficient, government more effective, and constituents better satisfied. One of the things we found was that there's a lot of good stuff going on around the country. State DOTs are innovating around the nation. And quite often their fellow DOTs aren't aware of the good stuff that's happening. So we wanted to get that work out there. And what the document does is it provides information on 34 policies and practices that we found in working with SSTI to be particularly innovative. The neat thing about the handbook is that it gets down into the how-to. It does provide the benefits of each policy and gives that kind of high-level overview, but it's written as if you were a DOT CEO or a senior staff person at a DOT or someone who is looking to engage and inform the policy direction of the DOT. So it talks about the benefits. It talks about steps for implementing the policies. It provides case studies of where things similar to the policy or the policy itself have been implemented elsewhere in the country, and then it gives the reader resources for further information so you can take that idea and run with it in your community. What the DOT handbook adds, what Innovative DOT adds, it puts it all in one place. So all these strategies that states all around the country are using are in one place where a transportation leader can develop a full program for smart transportation. The inspiration from this came from a meeting that I had with Toks' boss, with the Commissioner Feller in Tennessee. We were talking about transportation innovation. He said, "That's great, Roger, give me 10 ideas." And I had 3 in my pocket, but I didn't have 10. And he said, "No, give me what you got." So what we did with this handbook was put it all together in one place where someone like Commissioner Schroller or a Toks Omishakin or other secretaries and DOT directors around the country, when they step into this new role, they can take it and run with it and make it their own. We bridge the gap between the high-level policy goals that a lot of our leadership, they're looking for results, but we provide concrete strategies for operationalizing those goals. When a governor, when a state legislature, when the leadership in the community says, "This is what we want," what we provide is the how-to. The handbook was developed in a collaborative effort, Smart North America and the State Smart Transportation Initiative got together originally back in 2011 on this, and the first handbook was released in 2012. You can see the project team, professionals from both organizations. We also engaged a number of consultants, Nelson Nygaard and Kittleson and Associates and Spitfire Strategies, who helped us with the communications side of this. This is the team that put the handbook together. We had an advisory committee. One of the things we wanted to do was make sure that we began with the end in mind. We wanted a handbook that was helpful to people that were in positions of leadership. So Al Millar, the former secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation and a good friend of both organizations, agreed to serve as the chair of our expert panel, along with Gene Conti and Paul Morris from North Carolina, Toks Omishakin from Tennessee, and Lynn Peterson, who's currently the secretary of the Washington Department of Transportation. But when we first began this, she was the governor of Oregon's advisor on transportation and sustainability. Additionally, Matt Garrett, the director of the Oregon Department of Transportation, provided some input. And then we had a lot of people reviewing. You can see an awful lot of people from the Michigan Department of Transportation, under the leadership of their director, Chris Spahr, provided great feedback, as well as the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation and the Arizona Department of Transportation. As we've worked on the book, one of the things we want it to be is a living document. So we've taken the time and the effort to update it on an annual basis. SSTI takes the lead on that, and we're happy to help. So one of the things we're hoping, if you use our document, when you use our document, if you think of a way to make it better, please let us know. We're tracking innovative strategies for meeting 21st century needs. Since the initial release of the handbook, we've seen improved revenue allocation and project selection procedures go into place. We've seen new planning efforts out there. We see DOTs make better use of existing infrastructure. We're seeing new design standards and project delivery procedures come into play. And what we want to do is make sure that as DOTs are doing an even better job of managing the transportation systems they're entrusted with, that the handbook reflects those changes, and we update the content, and we add new case studies, and we add new policies as appropriate. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Chris.
Thanks so much, Roger. So now I just want to talk a little bit about how we select the policies and practices that we include in the Innovative DOT Handbook. So when thinking about case studies and thinking about different best practices, we use the same criteria that was set up in the very beginning, and we make sure we adhere to it for all of the updates. We explore all aspects of the work of state DOTs and other relevant agencies, from planning to engineering to the policy development side to the revenue side, to find some of the best strategies for addressing the current funding realities and providing a means for getting the best outcomes out of the transportation investments. Some of the key principles behind this approach are improved access to destinations with greater choice for users, more prosperous states and regions, preservation of existing infrastructure, reduced environmental impacts, healthier communities, and more transparent and accessible governance. So what's in the handbook? The handbook is divided into 8 focus areas. Under these 8 focus areas, we've identified 34 strategies. The handbook is not meant to be read cover to cover, but is meant to provide a resource for state DOTs so that they can address specific concerns. For example, if a DOT is looking to increase revenue, it could go to focus area 1. Or if someone in a DOT wants to see examples of states that are doing a particularly good job with bike and pedestrian transportation, they could take a look at focus area 5. There's a good deal of overlap and common themes throughout the handbook, as well as references to outside resources that can provide more information within these 8 focus areas. So within the 2015 edition, which was just released a couple of weeks ago, there are 10 new case studies with existing strategies that were in the 2014 edition. We try to be diligent about staying on track of the new trends. For example, the Oregon DOT recently developed a tool called Mosaic to help with project selection, and so we provide a case study on that tool. And a case study that we'll hear more about in this webinar is the work of the Tennessee DOT in integrating land use and transportation in the decision-making process, as well as funding for multiple modes of transportation. We've also updated case studies and highlighted new best practices within the individual focus areas. For example, we added some good information about using big data sources to help in project selection and performance measurement. We've also added some great information on developing non-motorized transportation performance measures. And with each edition of the Innovative DOT, we try to improve the experience for the user. So in the 2015 edition, we added more hyperlinks so that users can jump directly to focus areas and jump between focus areas. And we've added an index at the end so that users can more easily identify specific topics within the handbook. So to best understand the types of strategies we highlight within the handbook, I feel it's most useful to hear from one of the DOTs in our network that is doing an especially good job of using innovative approaches to address 21st century transportation challenges. The Tennessee DOT has really stood out in the areas of community engagement as well as multimodal funding. And here to talk about this today is Toks Omishakin. Thanks for being with us today, Toks.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon to everybody, and thanks for Chris, for the shout-outs, and Roger, thank you as well. I didn't know we were part of the impetus for getting the Innovative DOT done, so whenever proceeds start coming in for this, make sure to send a cut our way down in Tennessee, Roger. So what I'm going to try to do is quickly cover within 10 to 15 minutes what's been happening in Tennessee as relates to multimodal transportation and planning as well. Some of what I think are some innovative steps that we've taken to address both of these issues. So when I came into TDOT in 2011, one of the things I was immediately charged with was updating our 25-year long-range plan. I think the last plan was completed in 2007, 2008, and I immediately started laying the groundwork for how we were going to update our long-range plan. And I think two or three things are really unique about the way we've gone about updating the plan. And I would say one for sure is how we've engaged communities across the state in the process of discussing transportation planning issues. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But two is the fact that we have gone about this plan, and we're probably 4 or 5 months away from being at the completion of the plan, completing the plan. But this plan's also a fiscally constrained plan. It is one of the things that's also very unique about it. DOTs generally do not develop long-range plans that are fiscally constrained. The federal requirements for that are mostly left up to MPOs, but we've said we want to adopt a plan. We want to create a plan that can actually be accomplished within the horizon years that are identified throughout the plan. And third and final thing that I think is pretty unique about our long-range plan is the fact that we have really emphasized multimodal transportation more than ever throughout the plan. And multimodal in the sense of both goods and how goods move about the state, whether it be air, the highway, or rail or water, but also multimodal in the sense of how people move, how people are going to be moving about, whether it be transit, walking, or biking. So those are three pretty unique things, again, that we've done as it relates to the long-range plan in Tennessee. And so I mentioned community engagement. It's one thing that we've taken very seriously at the Tennessee DOT. You probably have heard many stories before of planning or engineering community meetings where you go out to the meetings and the government officials outnumber the citizens that have been called out to attend the meetings. And so one of the things we decided to do very early on was we're going to have a very different approach to getting the community engaged. And one of those things was we did a customer survey very early on as a part of the process. And what this slide here shows the results of part of the results rather of the customer survey that we did. in 2013, and the question we asked in this particular area was, over the next 25 years, what do you want? What do you expect the Tennessee DOT to focus on? And so the survey went out to three different groups, if you will, residents, partners, and elected officials. And we got back some pretty interesting results. This slide here it's color coordinated, as you can see, where we had results that are all similar. But one thing I want to point out in particular here is number 4, across the board, whether it be residents in our state, whether it be partners, and partners here is talking about MPOs, RPOs, and planning departments and so forth across the state, or elected officials at the state level, at the local level, county level, all across the board. Everybody felt the fourth most important thing that we needed to address over the next 25 years was expanding the public transportation systems that we have throughout the state. And all throughout here, there are things like addressing mobility needs for seniors, addressing commercial truck traffic, that again emphasize the fact that people are expecting us to, the citizens of the state are expecting us to be, to have multimodal solutions to address the challenges the transportation challenges that we have. And so the other unique part of how we've decided to engage communities in this, beyond the survey that we sent out, was again, we were very aware of the fact that we could end up in meetings where we would outnumber our planning staff and engineering staff will outnumber the citizens. And we said, we're not going to do that this time. We're going to create something that we now call a Book a Planner series, where anybody can log on to TDOT's website and basically book a planner to come out to their existing meeting. We'll go to any nonprofit associations like the Rotary clubs and things like that. We've actually even done meetings in fast food restaurants. And as you can see on this particular slide, we've done 146 of those over the last 18 months or 2 years since we've been doing this long-range plan process. And we talk about everything from issues in the long-range plan to planning issues in general, land use issues, to funding issues as it relates to transportation. And as you can see, the green column on here shows the number of people that have attended these meetings across the state. So 5,000 people almost attending, nearly 5,000 people attending these meetings that we've had. There's no way that we would have numbers like this if we said we wanted people to come out to our own specific DOT meetings, but by tagging on to existing meetings across the state, that's how we've gotten this level of participation. Our website is also, again, an incredible amount of hits. And the first column there just shows the regions. Tennessee DOT is divided into 4 regions, or in some states they call them districts, and you can see the attendance in those areas. So part of how we've been able to get this engagement done is we created a new office at TDOT called the Office of Community Transportation. And that office is pretty unique, I'm sure, across DOTs and DOTs across the country. I know of maybe 2 more DOTs that may have something similar. But what we've essentially done is we've hired planners in our district offices or regional offices across the state that focus mainly on land use and transportation issues that may arise, that may impact the statewide transportation network. And day in and day out, that's what these guys do, in addition to coordinating those Book a Planner meetings and staffing those meetings. But they're going to school board meetings, they're going to planning department meetings and meetings like that DOTs really don't get involved in at that local level. And part of the reason is because a lot of times land use decisions are made, as we all know. These decisions are made at what not a lot of thought for the transportation component, especially the statewide component. And so what we've decided to do is make sure that we've got planners on the ground in our regional offices. We have 8 planners spread out our regional offices who've got their ears to the ground, who know when major developments are going to come up. You know, schools being relocated, a new mall is about to be built, or whatever, and they're out there in those communities talking to community folks and engaging them as they're about to make various land use and transportation decisions. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this particular slide, if you're a planner or an engineer, you've probably seen it 1,000 times, but this conventional form of development we know is, you know, pretty much invaded the country for a 50 to 60 year period. Tennessee faced the same thing where, you know, in this particular example, if you wanted to get from a house to a school, you can get there without getting on the main drag or the main arterial at the bottom of the screen there. So that's, in this example, that would be the state highway, that would be the state facility. And so, you know, we developed in a form that is not well laid out, it's not well connected, doesn't have the right densities. And so what ends up happening is the major arterial, the major roadways end up getting clogged and congested all the time. And there are real examples throughout the country, I'm sure in many of your communities, and here in Tennessee we've got tons of them. This is just one example of a mall, a shopping mall built in the southeastern part of Nashville and Davidson County in the late 70s. The road to the east there is the major state highway, and the road that's kind of at the bottom of the screen is Interstate 24. This particular part of the city and the county is probably one of the most congested in the entire state. But if you look north of where the shopping mall is, you see a development pattern that is pretty similar to the graphic that I showed before, where you have cul-de-sac subdivisions and apartments to the west of it that you cannot directly access the mall or schools or anything nearby. And this is why we said TDOT needs to have planners who understand land use and transportation issues on the ground as communities make decisions like this, and not just your typical engineer or planner within the department. So it's a very innovative approach to addressing transportation issues that we've taken. One of the tools that we use to get this done is we've created what's called community transportation planning grants. We said we needed incentives for communities who don't have fancy planners on their staff. They don't have the tools. They don't have the capacity to do the right planning, to do the appropriate planning. We said we're going to come up with grants that only require a small match. And in this particular case, I think it's a 5% match that we have for these community transportation planning grants. But communities who need to do corridor studies, complete street plans, roadway reconfiguration plans like road diets, the TSMO plans, bike ped plans, all the plans that can be very useful if implemented to help make a more functional transportation system. Those plans, we said we will help fund them. Up to $250,000 worth of planning grants are now available through TDOT to communities that don't have those resources to get such plans done. And so those planners that we have in the regions, across our regions, are actively involved in making sure communities who don't have these types of plans can get them, can apply for a grant from TDOT and actually get them. So switching gears a little bit to talk just quickly about multimodal, how we're addressing multimodal issues at TDOT and what's unique about our approach. I think many states have what I call the usual suspects of how multimodal projects get funded, especially multimodal projects for moving people. A lot of our projects get funded by STP dollars, and many of those projects have sidewalks and bike lanes and things like that throughout those projects. And everyone knows about Transportation Alternatives Program, Safe Routes to Schools, CMAC, excuse me, Recreational Trails Program, and FTA transit funds. All these funds they fund projects here at TDOT that benefit pedestrians, cyclists, and transit. But one of the things that we noticed as we were going out to communities to help get these projects in these areas done was community said, look, I have a $300,000 sidewalk connection and I need pedestrian scale lighting and a bus stop. That's what I need. I don't want to go through a 3-year process in one of these federally funded projects, programs to get that done. It's going to take me 3 years and I have to jump through all these hoops for $300,000. Is there any other way that you can help me get a project done? And so it's one of the things that we heard repeatedly in communities throughout the state, and we decided to come up with our own multimodal funding program, and it's called the Multimodal Access Grant, where we worked with the commissioner. I worked with the commissioner and my counterpart on the engineering side of the department. We worked with the commissioner to set aside $30 million over the next 3 years to address multimodal needs along our state highway network. So issues like this is a particular example in Knoxville, Tennessee, in the eastern part of the state, where the city identified a need for a bus shelter at an existing bus stop, need for sidewalks, need for improved crossing. We said we would fund projects like this through the Multimodal Access Grant. And these are the type of projects that we've funded in the first round of grants that were awarded last year. So everything from pedestrian crossings to shoulder widening projects, sidewalks, bike lanes, ADA improvements, bus shelters, roadway reconfigurations, park and ride facilities. These are all the types of things that we've said we will fund and are funding with this multimodal access grant. And what's unique about this grant is the fact that it's state funds. So we have a streamlined process. We don't have to jump through and don't want to make light of what's required by the federal government here, but we've come up with our own process essentially with these funds, and you don't have as many things that you have to do unlike some of the things that you're required to do in the usual suspects slide that I showed earlier. So $30 million over the next 3 years, and last year we awarded $9.9 million to 13 communities across the state. Those blue spots you see on the Tennessee map there are the 13 counties that we awarded grants to. And guy in the suit there is Commissioner Schur, that's my boss, and the mayor of the city of Clarksville, Mayor McMillan, receiving a check for over $800,000 to do a major bike ped transit improvement on one of their major highways in Clarksville, Tennessee. So to wrap up here, one of the things that we've heard consistently as we've gone about to enhancing our multimodal investments and planning and policy issues related to it, is that people have asked the question, why is Tennessee doing this? And these are questions not only that we hear across the country, but also within the state. Some people wonder, why you're doing it. Say, this is, is it a waste of money? Is this a waste of time? Should we be spending state funds elsewhere? So we've decided to pretty much boil it down to one message, and that message can be said in 4 simple words. This is about more connections and more choices for people, connecting modes and providing choices for people to be able to get about our communities in the state of Tennessee. And we always make the connection to the economic impacts, economic benefits that making these investments as well. Whenever you make an investment like this one, I think this image here is in the before and after pictures in Columbia, Tennessee. When you make investments like this, you see the economic return as far as additional commercial activity that picks up. You see utilization for both recreational and transportation, and you see the increased tax revenue that comes in especially in commercial areas when the state or local community decides to make investments in these areas. So there's a clear return on investment when you make investments like this, and we try to boil down the message again to we want to connect our modes more and provide more choices for people and communities across the state of Tennessee to get about. So in a nutshell, I know that I did that very quickly, but that's what's happening in some phases on the multimodal front in Tennessee, and on the planning side as well, how we are engaging communities, doing outreach in very unique ways. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Toks. That was really, really great summary of a lot of the great things you guys are doing there in Tennessee. And this is the stuff that we really, really like to highlight in the Innovative DOT. So if you go to the Innovative DOT, you'll see these examples are in there, as well as many other examples throughout the country that are similar, that are just really great work that's being done at the DOT level. Now we're going to change gears a little bit, and we're going to hear from Billy Fields about a unique way in which the Innovative DOT is being used to train future transportation professionals and policymakers. Billy, who works as a professor at Texas State University, has been really proactive in using the Innovative DOT to help students think outside of the box when trying to find solutions to particularly difficult policy challenges. And so now I invite Billy to share his experience with us.
Thanks, Chris. I'm excited to be here today. I'm going to take things in a little bit of a different direction. We've been talking about, Toks talked about the challenges of a Department of Transportation and working on engagement and really trying to find different ways to engage people from outside transportation with inside transportation, and really get at a lot of non-traditional stakeholders, the community who they really want to engage. And one of the things that I do, I teach in a public administration program, and so I teach some transportation folks, I teach economic development folks, health and human services, a wide range of people. And one of the things I'm really interested in is figuring out ways to take these really complicated problems, talking about engagement, and boiling them down and talking about them in terms of places that are impacted. Transportation is a really interesting area because transportation projects impact place. They drive development. They create places that we want to live, or maybe that we don't want to live as much. And so what I try and do is utilize the Innovative DOT as a way to talk about those issues in terms of how to build better communities and how to really think about those issues. So what I'll do really briefly for you, if I can get this to move. Let's see.
Bill, if you just click directly on the slide, it'll
there we go. Perfect. Thank you very much. So what I'll do is I'll run through this idea of linking policy in place and look at how the Innovative DOT does that. I'll give you an example of complete streets and look at sort of this place-based policy idea. And then I'll talk about the tensions that I see when we're talking about silos and efficiency and place and how these issues really play out. One of the things that Toks talked about kind of on the side was about how the DOT was trying to sort of expand the different types of people who were engaged in public meetings. One of the things that has traditionally happened is departments of transportation have seen their role, broadly speaking, as moving cars. When you begin to think more multimodally, you have to engage outside of that silo, and then you end up talking to planners, schools, and you heard Toks' stories about how all those different groups were being engaged. And that's really what I'm trying to get at my students to think more broadly about. So let's take a look at this. Basically, you all know public policies shape place. We have these basic ideas about what a policy is, and then when it actually comes to be implemented, it changes the way that we look and feel and the way that we engage with our communities. And they can have large impacts on economic, social, and environmental outcomes, and they can encourage or discourage certain things that we may want. And public managers are always crafting and implementing those policies that impact places. But most of the time, they do it indirectly. They're not thinking that they're actually impacting place. So there's a new movement called, oops, I went too fast. Sorry. Let's see if I can go back.
At this point, you can use the back arrow.
There we go. I'm back in the game. Sorry, everybody. So there's a new movement, and the new movement is based around place governance. This is a slide from a project for public spaces that I worked for briefly years and years ago, and I really like their slide because what it shows is the different ways that we silo out our planning. There's transportation, there's planning, there's economic development, and there's all different types of areas. Then there's the political leadership on top, and all of these things impact the way that places work. And traditionally, when other people teach public administration, they look at each one of those different silos and teach individual components of them. And what place governance is about is it says each one of those different silos needs to work together to improve the places, to improve the quality of life, to make places better for the residents. That's what residents really want. They want to live in a healthy, economically vital, socially sustainable community. And to do that, you need to think about the impacts that all different types of policies are having on place. Oops. So what I do is I use the innovative DOT to tell that story. And one of the best ways to do this is in focus area 5. I focus on the complete streets policies. Basically, one of the things I really liked about the innovative DOT is the way they boil down complete streets. Basically, the innovative DOT says that innovation of complete streets is not in new designs, but in new ways of doing business and making decisions. It's really about thinking differently about how we go about these processes. And it's culturally challenging. It asks us to do things in different ways. Instead of planning for one mode, it asks to plan for multi-modes at the same time. And the broad lessons of the innovative DOT speak to structured implementation, changing procedures, reviewing design guidance, providing training, and measuring performance. Basic steps in management, but at the same time really, really important for getting a new program moving and off the ground. What I then do is I talk about a little bit of research that I did at the Louisiana Department of Transportation. I interviewed a number of folks from multi-levels at the DOT, outside of the DOT, and I looked at the implementation of complete streets in Louisiana. And what I found was that my research really matched the innovative DOT findings really well. Basically, what we found was that there wasn't a very structured implementation process. There was a need for that type of structure. There were really great ideas in terms of leadership, but it wasn't filtering down. And the innovative DOT provides that sort of context and structure. And so I talk to my students about that, about the need for that type of structure. Then what we do is we move to looking at the area of transportation and land use, of integrating those areas. And Toks talked a little bit about this. So what I do is I focus on breaking down the silos of administration and implementation of culture change. One of the things that the innovative DOT does really well, I think, is talk about cultures of organizations. Organizations have certain ways of doing things, certain processes, and some of them are written down and some of them aren't. And to go about changing the way that you do business, you need to handle both the written and the unwritten ways or rules of doing that. So what we do for my students is we talk a little bit about that. And I ask them questions. What is the leadership role in fostering change? How do you push for policy change? And then how do you create a process to handle this? Excuse me. So what we do is systematically address how the students can begin to create culture change and systematic implementation of the innovative DOT findings. And this is a really exciting thing for us because what it does, excuse me, is it allows the students to really think more holistically and broadly about what's possible. And innovative DOT is a great platform for that. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Billy. That's really neat how you bring the innovative DOT into your classroom and how you really challenge your students. As someone who works at a university and who also lectures at a university, I find this, I may have to borrow some of your ideas because that's I think a really great way to teach. So thanks for sharing that with us, and we're really glad that the innovative DOT has been useful to you. So now just to, before we go to questions, I just want to go over some of the concluding items in our webinar today. So Roger mentioned this before. The Innovative DOT is intended to be a living document, and we hope to continue to update it on an annual basis. So we invite you to help us improve it. If you have any ideas of new and interesting content, whether it be strategies or case studies, we encourage you to send that information to either Roger at Smart Growth America or Eric Sundquist, the Managing Director of SSTI, and their contact information is here on this slide. For more information about the Innovative DOT, you can go to either the SSTI website or the Smart Growth America website to download the handbook. Additionally, if you go to the SSTI website, we invite you to sign up for our e-newsletter, which comes out every 2 weeks. We will have news on upcoming webinars in the newsletter, as well as links to reports and articles of interest to the transportation community. You can also follow us on Twitter, where we will post reminders of webinars, our newsletters, and other items of interest. And visit our website, ssti.us, to visit past webinars, articles, and to find resources. And finally, I'd like to just thank our supporters of this project, including the Rockefeller Foundation, who has been a generous supporter, as well as the U.S. DOT and the Federal Highway Administration. Thank you for listening today, and if you haven't entered your question, you can do so now. Again, if you don't see where to type a question, just go to the orange arrow in the upper right corner of your screen to bring up the chat box. And one more time, a recording of the webinar and the slides will be up on the SSTI website by tomorrow if you want to refer back to this. So I'll look at the questions here. We do have a question here for Toks. Someone had asked, how does TDOT fund the community transportation planning grants? And so, Toks, maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So the first round of this, and this is the first time that we're going to do it, is this year. The first round is going to be funded by planning dollars that were budgeted a few years back. I would say probably at least 3 or 4 years ago. It was actually in the budget before I got here. So there was a set aside in our state funds for planning projects across the state, like corridor studies and things like that that was never utilized. And so this first round, we're actually going to make use of those funds that have been on the books for a few years here. But moving forward, I think it's going to be harder and harder to get state funds to be set aside for initiatives like this. So what we're planning to do is to use SPR funds, and all DOTs get SPR funds. State Planning and Research is what it's called if you're in a local government and not familiar with it. If you look up SPR and your state DOT's name, they should have a web page or some information about state planning and research funds. And so moving forward, our plan, if this first round is successful, moving forward, we're going to be using federal dollars in the SPR program to fund those community planning grants across the state.
Thank you, Toks. And hopefully that answers our listeners' question. I think you did a very good job. A question for Billy. Billy, you talk about how your students are used to learning the different areas of public administration separately. How do your students respond when you use the Innovative DOT to work across those different silos?
Thanks. It's actually pretty challenging. Place doesn't come naturally to a lot of my students. I come out of an urban planning background, and urban planners immediately are attached to place, but they talk less about policy. My students understand policy really, really well, but haven't been versed in place. So really there's a need to improve training and really to unsilo academic areas so that we learn more about this. So that by the time my students end up in management positions in different agencies, they've already learned how to coordinate and how to talk a little bit better about these issues. So really what I see is this idea of place governance, hopefully being a tool to begin to think a little bit more broadly about these issues. And Complete Streets seems like a perfect avenue to begin to have that conversation, because it forces you to think a little bit differently, to think outside of silos, and really to look at the impact of transportation, land use, economic development simultaneously, so that we create better places, better, healthier places for people.
Great. Thank you very much, Billy, for that response.
This is Robbie. I've been in the background here. Toks, I actually have a question for you. That chart that you showed about the priorities of residents and partners and elected officials. You know, it's very interesting what people prioritize. And I'm just sort of wondering how Tennessee DOT manages to figure out the priorities, because these different groups have different priorities. I mean, how do you talk to these different groups about the fact that other people might have different priorities that are also very important partners, you know?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Robbie. It's kind of interesting. By the way, there were 3,000 responses that we received on this survey, so it was a pretty high. I can't remember what the percentage response rate was, but it was higher than anything that you would expect from a governmental entity. So that's a good question. I mean, one of the things, if you look at that slide, I don't know if you can get it back up for the people online viewing and listening in, but one of the things that's pretty unique about that slide is, and I try not to talk about this a lot, but if you look at the elected official column, the second most important thing to elected officials is building new highways. When you ask them what are their top 5 priorities. If you look in the residents column, building new highways is nowhere in there. They feel like we need to maintain what we have better, address congestion, you know, deal with freight, public transportation, and seniors. So, you know, how do you mesh all this information together into something that results in projects and policies down the line that sends the state in the right direction? And it's something that we're still working our way through. I mean, one of the things that we've done is we've been very frank about and very open and transparent about the differing outlooks on people's needs and people's expectations across the state. But that's one of the clear differences between these two groups, if you will, is you know, the fact that building new roads is not something that the residents of our state really want us to do. But there's so many other things that go into you know, making the decision on what transportation project we eventually go with. I mean, we do a lot of modeling. We do a lot of policy analysis. We do some ROI, you know, type of analysis to see, you know, what's the best return on that particular project. So there's so many other factors that go into us eventually making a decision, and this is just one component. But in this very component here, you know, when we've done these, you know, 150 meetings across the state, we've been very clear with residents and the people who attend the meetings that it's a little different for each group. I mean, the one unanimous thing that everybody agreed with was, like I mentioned earlier, was number 4 as far as public transit.
Thanks. I just was very struck with that slide, and I thought it was an interesting one for deciding on project and talking to different groups. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have no further questions at this time. So right now I would just like to thank our speakers today, Roger, Toks, and Billy. You all did a fantastic job in the limited amount of time that we gave you to really provide useful information for us. And And thanks for all your contributions to the Innovative DOT. And we encourage all of our listeners to go to either the Smart Growth America website or the SSTI website to take a look at the Innovative DOT. And if you ever have any questions about it, don't ever hesitate to contact us here at SSTI or Roger over at Smart Growth America. Thanks to all of our listeners, and we look forward to seeing you on future webinars.